How do you know when it's time to leave your nonprofit, even though you still can do the job? Not because you are burned out, not because you can't do the job anymore, but because the organization has moved into a phase that needs a different kind of executive leader than the one you've been. Being able to keep going doesn't mean staying is best for the mission. I talk with leaders who've been asking themselves this for a year or more, at night, by themselves. Most leaders look inward for the answer. Today, we're looking outward at the organization. 7 tells, 3 questions. And one of the tells is the one most leaders miss until it's already started costing them. Question 1, does your leadership still fit where this nonprofit is going? Question 2, can this organization grow beyond you? Question 3, is waiting making this harder than it has to be when the day comes? Under each question, I'll give you specific tells, things you can literally look for in your board, your team, and in the way decisions get made. Seeing these tells does not mean you resign, but by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what they do mean for your next step. We usually think leaders leave because something went wrong. Money got tight, the board turned on them, they ran out of gas. Well, that's not what happened to me. I ran an organization here in Detroit for 10 years. Nobody had built anything like it before, and it worked. People stopped calling to ask what we did. They started calling to ask for help because they knew we could. Now, I was not tired of it. I was good at it, and I was getting better at what I was doing. Part of me wanted to stay. But here's what we were being asked to do next. Go national. Build the same model in other cities. Take on projects that really were innovative but began to go a little outside our mission. Now, nothing had gone wrong. We had succeeded. And success had moved the organization into a new state that needed a different kind of executive leader than the one who started it. So let's start with the first question. Does your leadership still fit where this nonprofit is going? The first question starts with the kind of shift that's easy to miss if you've been in the role too long. There are 2 things to watch for here. I talked with an executive director who spent 12 years building a small organization into something her whole county depended on. She was excellent at it. Then the next thing on her board's list was a merger with a bigger agency. Now, she had never done a merger. She did not want to learn that either. Now, this was not a failure. This was a fit check. The merger didn't fit what she did best or what she wanted to learn next. This first tell sounds simple, but it usually shows up before people are ready to name it. Tell 1, the next phase needs different strengths. Organizations change what they need. A place that once needed someone to build it from nothing may now need someone to run it at 3 times the size. Sometimes what's needed next is a merger. Sometimes it's a whole new way of raising money. Now, let me be careful here because this tell is often misread. This is not about, I have a weakness, so I should go. Every one of us has some kind of weakness, and we lead anyway. This tell is something different. The core work this organization needs now has changed. So the honest question is whether that core still matches what I do best and what I want to give next. Okay? Tell 2, you and your board no longer want the same future. Now, disagreeing with your board is not a tell. If it were, none of us would be here. The tell is when it stops being workable. Not a fight over one budget line, not one bad hire. I mean a real split on where the organization is going, what it's doing, what winning looks like, who decides what, how fast things should change, and what kind of leader this place needs now. The question to ask yourself is this: can my board and I still build the next chapter? Or are we pulling this organization toward 2 different futures? I worked with an organization where the executive wanted to go deeper with fewer people, a leaner staff, and the board wanted to go wider, pick up many more things, and serve more. Now, both were good ideas. He was not wrong. The board was not wrong. They spent 2 years trying to do both, and neither one worked well. Now, this next question is where a lot of boards and executives quietly drift apart. Can this organization grow beyond you? So now we move from fit to dependency. And this is where the picture gets harder to ignore. A CEO I know took 2 weeks off. First real vacation in years. I'm so glad he did it. He came back and nothing had gone wrong. He was so proud of that. Then he opened his email. Nothing had gone wrong and nothing had moved either. Decisions were sitting there waiting on him. Now, one of them really was a decision only a CEO could make. Now, this is the easiest place to see the pattern if you know what to look for. Tell 3, decisions wait for you. And it's really the easiest one to test. When I have been away for a week, the first thing I look at is what piled up. Look for staff checking with you on things they already know how to handle. Board members coming straight to you. Projects that slow down when you're out. And nobody being sure who decides when you were not in the room. If decisions still pile up on you once the organization is established, that's not loyalty. That's a succession risk. Tell 4, your senior people have the responsibility but not the authority. Tell 3 is about where decisions get stuck. Tell 4 is about whether anybody else is allowed to make those decisions. So the question, am I building leaders or am I building people who are only allowed to lead when I'm out of the room? Tell 5. The trust belongs to you and not to the organization. Now, this one matters more than most leaders realize because it affects what happens after you leave. Here's the one I got wrong for years. I thought if the donors believed in the mission, the relationships were safe. Somewhere along the way, I had become, however, the only door they walked through. Same with the community partners. Same with the folks downtown who answered my calls. Same sometimes with my own board. The question I had to ask myself was this: if someone else sat in my chair tomorrow, how many of these relationships would still be strong? If the answer worries you, that is not a reason to stay. It is a reason to start widening the circle now while you are still here, so the organization isn't left standing in your shadow when you leave. Now, the next of the 3 questions is different. It's not about what would happen if you left. It's about what waiting is costing you right now. 3rd question: is waiting making this harder than it needs to be? This question is the one many people avoid because it forces an honest look at timing. A board I sat with had known for 3 years that their structure really wasn't the best. Too many people reporting to the executive, no real second in command. Everybody agreed. And frankly, it came up at every retreat. And every year they put it off. Nobody was hiding anything. They just kept landing in the same place every year. They would say, let's wait until after the campaign. Let's not do it in a difficult year. Let's give it one more cycle. What they were actually protecting was the way the executive's job worked. Now, nobody ever said that part out loud. So tell 6, the organization keeps putting off changes that would change your role. The ones to notice are the changes that never quite happen. Restructuring, spreading out who decides what, building a real senior team, changing how the money comes in, rewriting the executive job itself, or talking about it in different ways. Those things stay on the list. They never get done. And if you trace back why, many of them would have changed really something about your job. your authority, your workload, what you decide, where you sit in the organization. So the item moves to next quarter and everybody feels fine about it. The question to ask yourself is this: are we deciding based on what this nonprofit needs next, or based on keeping my job the way it is? This last tell is the one that changes the conversation from someday to now. Tell 7. Waiting is taking your choices off the table. Every one of us leaves. That's not what you're looking for. Nobody gets to stay forever. The tell is that you have enough information to start and the organization is still running like nothing will ever change. Because here is what I have watched happen. A transition you start early is a decision you make. A transition you start late gets made for you. Same transition, completely different set of options. The longer you treat this as a someday problem, the fewer choices your organization will have when someday shows up. And I will say this as plainly as I can to you. Stop letting silence make the decision for you. None of these 7 tells means you resign tomorrow. Now, I promised at the start I would tell you what they do mean. Here it is. Now, one tell on its own is something to keep an eye on. What matters is not how many you count. It's whether they are spread across all the 3 questions. Because when your leadership no longer fits where this is headed, and the play still runs through one person, you, and the changes that would fix things keep getting pushed to next year, that is a pattern. And a pattern is not a private question about your feelings anymore. It is a risk to your organization. That is the point where succession stops being someday and becomes part of what your job needs to be. It means you get honest about what this organization needs next, and you start taking the weight off one person, you, so the place can stand on its own. And it means you open the conversation, not the resignation, the conversation. And here's one part of this that has nothing to do with the organization and everything to do with you. When I looked at what was in front of that organization that I told you about, when it was decided that the next phase was really national travel and new ventures stacked on top of the ones we had already had and started, I could have done every bit of it. It was good at that point and what I was doing in the work. and I was getting better at it. I did not want to do it. Not because I was worn out, because I did not want to spend the next years of my life on that work. For a long time, I thought that was not a good enough reason. It felt like something you were not allowed to say. So I told myself the organization had outgrown me. And honestly, some of that was true too. Here's what I eventually learned. The mission deserves the right leader for its next stage, and you deserve the right work for your next chapter. Both truths can be real at the same time. The 7 tells show you what your organization needs. Only you can answer what you still want to give it. That part nobody can do for you. And that is where many leaders get stuck, because there's a right way and a very risky way to open that conversation. Bring it up wrong, and your board hears one thing: she's leaving. Then you spend the next year being treated as if you've already left. So click this one video right here, and I will show you exactly how to raise succession with your board without them thinking you are already halfway out the door.